Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Black Queer Unapologetic. This is going to be season 2. I want to thank you for coming back if you've been here since season 1. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. This podcast exists for people who want to have more honest conversations about life, dating, relationships, sex, all the things, especially through Black and queer perspectives that don't get enough room to be discussed. This isn't a podcast about having all the answers or making up the right way to do things. This is discussing different topics, asking the questions, and actually sitting with those thoughts. Since this is the first episode of season 2, we're just going to reconnect. So let's get into it.
Hey, black, queer, unapologetic. Black, queer, unapologetic. I know who I am, now you know what I'm about. I say the thoughts in my head out loud. Let's get into it, let's pick up the flow though. Brought to you by the one they call JoJo. Black, queer, unapologetic. Black, queer, unapologetic. Let's go.
All right, so what is this podcast and who is it for? There have been times where I have had conversations with people that said that they were not sure if they could participate in the podcast or whatever because they are not Black or they are not queer. I always say at the end of every episode, stay Black, stay queer, and if you're neither, always stay unapologetic. You do not need to be Black or queer to participate in these conversations, but you should be coming into these conversations with an open mind and an open heart and open to hearing perspectives that do not look like your own. This podcast has always been, from its beginning, with the intention to amplify Black and queer voices unapologetically. So if you are not Black and you are not queer, you are more than welcome to listen. You are more than welcome to come on here and have a conversation with me or somebody else. There are panel discussions that I have in the works that I would like to get off the ground. But at the root, this podcast has always been about that. And really, people who are open to thinking deeply about their choices, notice patterns in their relationships, dating, everyday lives, feeling tension between independence and connection, and all the struggles that we have as people, not just being a Black person or a queer person. There's a lot of intersectionality that goes into that. So I do want to just call that out. Some of these episodes are solo reflections. Some of them will include guests. Some of them will include panels. The conversations will always be in depth, asking the hard questions, challenging assumptions. And this time around, don't come on here and try to bullshit me. Like, for real. I mean, there's been times where I've had to have conversations with people or like recorded episodes where I'm just like, I'm not putting that on there because it was a bunch of bullshit. So, yeah. That being said, the goal is always the same: to explore real Black queer experiences and amplify those voices unapologetically. And that is going to continue to be the intention of this podcast going forward. So before we get into more about the show itself, I want to share some small updates just to ground where I'm coming from as the host of this show. Nothing dramatic and nothing like overly personal. Just over the past few months, I've just been recalibrating a lot with who I am and where I'm going and those types of things, pace, priorities, energy, etc. I've been more intentional about what I'm doing with my life and the conversations that I want to have and whether or not those conversations are worth having. More selective about how I'm spending my time and thoughtful about those conversations that I am having and who I'm having those conversations with. That shift directly affects the podcast, not because the show is about my life, but because it's easier to host thoughtful conversations when you're not rushing or reacting to a bunch of background noise. So if you have ideas that you want to have brought onto the podcast, if you yourself would like to come on and be a guest, that's totally fine. We can have that conversation. But I've also run into situations where people are trying to tell me how to do this who have never done it before. I had never done it before either, and I like what I've come up with. So I would like there to be a certain level of respect for this art form of what I'm doing. This is not to say that, I don't welcome other people's opinions, because I totally do. It's just that I would prefer that you come to me with respect and with awareness around what you're asking me to do and what you're asking me to talk about. So the season 2 will reflect more intentional approaches around what I'm doing in the conversations that I'm having and who I'm having those conversations with. Again, feel free to reach out to me. It's all good. We can have a conversation. Don't be scared. It's totally fine. But just be aware that, what did Erykah Badu say? Keep in mind that I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. Basically. Yeah. Let's talk about season 1. I think we should talk about what worked and also what you guys like, because at the end of the day, this is some form of entertainment, and you guys listen to specific things that I'm definitely going to call out here. But we did explore a lot of topics in season 1, from dating, relationship dynamics, hookup culture, being single in present days, and all the apps and things like that. Rejection, that is an episode that is near and dear to my heart, just because I feel like a lot of people take rejection really hard. Identity, emotional availability, and the strongest episodes based on listener response were the ones about dating and hookups and relationship dynamics, surprisingly. I feel like a lot of people have opinions about that kind of stuff. They have a lot of different perspectives about that kind of stuff. And those topics sit right in the middle of recognition and discomfort. And some people may not necessarily know where they stand in that. And so having a listen to a conversation that other people are sharing their perspectives, or being open about the experiences that they've had and the reasons why they've made the decisions or chosen those things for themselves, can actually help other people figure out what they want to do with them, with their own dating lives and hookups and being single and those types of things. I think that the episodes resonated because they're not really framed as advice. Like, I try to give a realistic view into why we're having that conversation. Like, for example, with rejection, why would you care? Like, if somebody doesn't like you, like, why do you care about that? And why does it hurt your feelings? I'm always the type of person that is asking why, and then I give my personal experience, like how I feel about it. But you don't have to feel the same way that I feel. Like, this is just one take, especially if it's a solo episode and I'm just on here running my mouth. You do not have to agree with what I say, but I am sharing my perspective. I'm also asking those questions that maybe you would like to ask yourself. And so hopefully I'm sharing some type of, not so much sharing, but giving an invitation for you to think outside the box and figure out what is going on with me, like, if I'm in this situation. So I guess the best way to put it is that they're framed as exploration, for you to think about, like, your situation while listening to someone else ramble on about it. Now, the fact that the dating and the hookups and the relationship dynamics were the top episodes, in addition to being a business owner, which I think we need to get more into that in future episodes, but the top 3 were about dating and sex and relationship dynamics. that tells me that y'all are here for the messiness. Because all of those featured guests and those guests were sharing their perspectives and their experiences in regards to the topic. Now, there is no perfection in these episodes. It's a lot of uncertainty. People are sharing their experiences from a place of lived experiences, and you guys are sitting here listening and probably judging, which, if that's what you're going to do. But I hope that you are also getting something out of the topics and not just listening for entertainment purposes. That is my hope. But if you are only listening for entertainment purposes, that's fine too. So last season we had 21 episodes. 8 of those episodes had guests. This season I'm shooting for about 22 to 26 episodes. I kind of just faded off at the end. So the idea is that this season will run from January through June. And then I need to take time off because I cannot do this year round. But guests are a huge part of this podcast, and that's not going to change. If anything, I would like to have more guests come on. I know a lot of people are not necessarily comfortable sharing their experiences openly. I've had people come to me and tell me that they want to come on and be anonymous. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. The whole point of this podcast is being unapologetic. So if you can't come on here and be your authentic self without hiding behind a screen, we need a name. And I'm not going to modulate your voice like you so you sound like Ghostface from Scream. Like, we're not going to do that. So if you would like to come on and be a guest, like, that's great. But there is no being anonymous. You have to have a name, and I'm not going to edit your voice so you don't sound like yourself. That's not going to happen. But the whole point of having guests is that they do not represent one correct perspective. I have my own perspectives. I have my own opinions. They have their own perspectives and have their own opinions. I have my own experiences, and so do they. A lot of the time I'm speaking from my own personal experiences and the way that I think and the way that I feel. And then when I have a guest come on, we can have that conversation back and forth about how we feel about different things and discuss the nuances between them. It adds texture to the stories. It helps to have different backgrounds, different ages, different approaches to the different topics. Some guests challenge ideas, and sometimes we agree on something, sometimes we don't. Some guests affirm things listeners already feel, and sometimes it's controversial, which is totally fine. I think that, thinking outside the box and like having different perspectives that people don't necessarily agree with, those conversations are important. But I do always want to make sure that those conversations end with clarity, and others end with more questions and more room for future conversations to be had. All of that is valuable. So season 2 will continue to bring on voices that expand the conversation, that add lived context. Obviously, we want to make sure that we are hearing about those lived experiences and allow listeners to hear themselves in different ways. So again, if you would like to be a guest, reach out. If you have a topic that you would like to be included in season 2, reach out. I already have a bunch of them that are pre-recorded and are scheduled, but there is room for more. If not, it'll probably pop up on season 3. And yeah. So you're probably wondering what to expect in season 2. And honestly, it's going to build on a lot of the same types of themes, but we do want to get into the nuances of those topics. So there's more depth, more intention, and you can expect episodes that explore, again, dating and more self-awareness, emotional availability, avoidance, boundaries, sex, a lot of different sexual topics that have come up that have been asked about. Masculinity and femininity. There has been a lot of conversation around dating and masculine versus feminine relationships and people that we're going to be exploring. being single without framing it as a failure. I don't know where this is coming from, but like a lot of people use it as an insult, which is really strange to me. Loneliness, rejection again, but without self blame. And we're also navigating adulthood when your timeline does not look traditional, which that is going to be a personal story of mine based on where my life is right now. And yeah, it'll probably go on Instagram before it comes on here. But yeah, some things just to look out for. We try to keep the conversations on each episode very reflective, but I do not like to treat them like interviews. I prefer for them to be conversational. Sometimes people do get nervous on here and they don't talk much. So I have to kind of try to like keep the conversation going. Not to say that they are like withholding information or anything like that, but there are times where people just get nervous, you know, and it can be a little bit challenging sometimes to keep an episode going when somebody is a little bit nervous. So I work with what I got, and I'm not going to hold anybody, at gunpoint for that. Just because the fact is that everybody's not comfortable being recorded. I try to make people as comfortable as possible, and the goal is just to try to stay consistent and to make sure those conversations are happening. If an episode just completely sucks, I'm not going to upload it. Maybe I'll do like a little snippet or something, but I'm not going to like upload the entire thing. I do want to just make sure that we are creating space for honest dialogue without rushing people towards pressure of like conclusions and performance and things like that. Like authenticity is always going to be number one for me. With that said, video. I've been asked so many times, Jojo, when are you going to do video? You should do video podcast. That is a lot more work for me. I do want to briefly address that. But video is part of the long-term plan for this podcast. If the downloads continue, if people are still listening, people are still engaged, great. I will continue the podcast, and the long-term plan does include video. No, it is not happening this season. No, it is not happening right now. The benchmark that I'm shooting for is consistent about 500 weekly downloads. We were close to that last season, but it wasn't consistent. And I think like for me to go through the extra work of cameras and more editing and more audio and having to work with guests who are comfortable being on camera and not just being recorded with audio, that is a challenge within itself. So I cannot do that right now unless the results of the podcast show me that it is worth it, unfortunately. So it is part of the long-term plan, but I just can't do it right now because I don't have the time. I'm starting to work on a lot of other creative projects that are going to take a lot of my time away, which is why, I am committing to doing the 6 months out of the year. So, if we can build a solid, engaged listener base before adding another layer of production for me, I would love that. I do want to do the video. It just takes up a lot of time. So when it does happen, I do want to make sure that it is adding to the experience and it's not a distraction and it does not risk changing the quality of what I feel like I'm building. Until then, focus stays on conversations and content. You can look forward to weekly uploads, but as far as like video goes, there won't be any as of now. However, there is a caveat to that. If I get a really good episode and it's with a guest, which is why I'm doing, like normally when I record with guests, I do them remotely. So it's being recorded on video. If I get a good recording out of a video podcast with a guest and that guest signs off on the video, I will upload snippets of that video. But I will not upload the entire thing because the editing takes forever. So yeah, I'm learning as I go, but the return has to be worth the effort. And as long as we can maintain and engage listener base, like I don't see why it won't happen in the future, but that's kind of where we stand on video. Before we wrap this episode, I just want to say thank you for listening, for sharing episodes, for engaging in the content. Thank you for trusting the space. I appreciate it. For those who have listened since season one, and if you're new here, please go back and take a listen to the season one episodes. And I look forward to seeing how you guys engage with the season two episodes. Again, we're just continuing these conversations with more clarity, more depth, more intention. I'm excited about what's coming up ahead, and I'm grateful that you guys have found value and interest in continuing to listen. If you have any feedback or questions or ideas that you would like me to cover for as like topics and things like that, you can reach out to me through Instagram. I changed my handle, so now it's Jojo is a vibe, JoJoisvibe. And, it doesn't have to be perfect wording or anything like that. But yeah, if you want to do that, you can send me a message, slide in the DMs. And as always, stay Black, stay queer. And if you are neither, stay unapologetic. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.